we fill the gap in the market where where there's a theory, an academic theory that we then translate into someone's normal average life that then they can relate to, and no one else is really doing that. We're this bridge between um like the non-academic sense in the philosophy psychology, and
Mm.
like if I was to say there was a clip that did like about 100K when I was saying about how what's more real, the desire of having the Cadbury's cream egg, or the Cadbury's cream egg itself. Now, if I was just to say what's more real, the thing or desiring the thing, that would not do half as well. But because
Mm.
it's specific and because people know that, and I put it in context that people know, it does very well. And so that's what I mean, I guess, to my sister when I'm saying, no, you want to be as specific as possible. And yeah, I see it in you quite a lot in your conversation skills, why you're good at sort of talking to strangers and stuff.
Mm. Um, I think, yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts. I think it's because it gives people something proper to work with and it gives them something interesting. Like when someone asks you, like, how was your day or how was this mundane thing you went and did? Yeah, you can say it was fine, you can say it was good, and the conversation might move on. But what they're really wanting is to hear something they haven't heard before, or hear something interesting, or for you to tell a story, because we love that. Humans crave that. We crave things that are interesting, we crave stories. And then that gives them something to bounce off in the kind of tennis match of the conversation. It's like they serve the question and you reply with an answer that they can then provide something back with, especially if it's something they can relate to, like you just referenced with the cream egg thing there. And also just being a bit different. Like how many people will you ask, how was your day or what was, how did you find it at whatever, the supermarket or what did you do? How was work today or how was school or whatever, right? Most of the time you will just get a one word answer or a very basic answer. Whereas if you give them something different, like that's you're immediately like you are pointed out as, oh, this person has something different and unique. And that people like that if you're friendly about it, of course. Like even today, like I went to Holland and Barrett to buy mosquito spray. And I asked the guy that worked there, like, where was it? And he showed me it. And I was like, is this going to protect me from yellow fever? Because I'm going to Brazil in 2 days. And like, rather than just saying thank you and taking the mosquito spray, we then went and had a little conversation. He was like, well, I don't know about that. Are you going in the jungle? And I was like, nah, it's just a sports competition, so I should be all right. And then we had, and he was friendly. Like, he smiled, I smiled, we got on with our day. And that's just a small little example. I could have just gone, thanks, thanks for a little like monotone response of thanks for showing me where it was. But I like this guy's vibe and we talked a bit. And even then, right, I hadn't told you this, but I'll tell you this. First day of camp this week, one of my teammates comes up to me and he goes, I applied some of your advice from the podcast. I was like, oh, here we go. He was like, at the McDonald's drive-through, I was nice to the lady that served me, and then she gave me like a little ticket or receipt thing to get a free like Big Mac meal next time I come. And he was like, it works. And I was like, yeah, be friendly to the world and see what the hell happens. So there's some truth in it. There is some truth in it.
That's brilliant. But that's really it's really something that we need to hang on to. We like I purposely word questions and so that they're specific or how I write now because it's one of our things that we do very well. So we need to
Hmm.
hang on to it.
It's
Um,
playful. It's playful, and people want that. People don't, people, I think we take life so seriously generally these days that when someone comes along and is unserious, it's very refreshing.
hmm. Another kind of warm-up question is some thoughts that I had today, and that I was thinking is the relationship between good and bad or chaos and order is does the bad kind of outweigh the good in terms of significance? So a couple of examples. The other week when I was with you and my phone mic stopped working, I was a little bit annoyed, but when when I type into ChatGPT and I'm like, how do I fix this? Okay, I need to shake my phone and I need to dry it, and then the mic just stopped working. After a couple of days, when it does start working again, my gratitude for the product goes away. It's like the functionality, the normal functionality I get used to it again, and I'm no longer very happy in that it works. It just feels like normal.
Mm.
Another example would be why does why when it's a normal sunny day, I go for my routine, I go to the gym, I go for a run, but as soon as it gets really raining like today, my dad will say like, "Oh, I don't feel like going on a run because of the weather," or "I don't feel like going to the gym because it's raining." So it's almost like I don't know, maybe it does the yin yang is a 50-50 relationship between yin and yang, but should it be more of a 70-30? I think
Well,
yin is the bad part. Um, yeah, to foot in favor to yin.
I know exactly what you're pointing to, even though you've got it in your like nice sort of concrete everyday examples, but you're pointing to negativity bias, which is a really well researched part of psychology. We have a cognitive bias where the negative, the painful, the the new in terms of like shocking new, surprising, novel experiences are much more salient in terms of our attention and our perceptions and our emotions. When things are going well, there's no need for your brain to pay particular attention to it. If we're thinking in evolutionary terms here, if there's no rustle in the bushes for a predator and the bushes are just doing what they're doing, just waving in the wind and looking beautiful, when there's no real need from an evolutionary perspective to pay attention to that. But if you hear the rumblings of a potential predator, then your brain is going to pay attention. It's that negativity, danger, fear bias that we do have, and it shows up in many of the modern, in many ways in the modern world. The fact that negative comments are so much more profound in our brain than positive comments on social media, or you might, when somebody smiles at you, you notice it for a moment and then you move on. Whereas if somebody gives you an evil look, or you have a emotionally disruptive interaction in public, that will stick with you for so much longer. And it's because really the things that are negative are out to hurt us or put us in danger or under threat. It's so much more important that we pay attention to those just from a like a survival basis. So that is a real thing. We do have a negativity
Mm.
bias. Um, and that's I think what you're pointing to.
Yeah, Nisha calls it this cosmic unfairness, because the net negative sort of multiplies greater. And for me, the question then is, if this is true, then should we focus on trying to reduce the possibility of negatives spreading rather than trying to improve the goodness? Should we, yeah, I guess if the negative is what's going to really strike us into chaos, should we kind of not let that, should we try and remove ourselves from the energy so that it doesn't, so that that negative energy doesn't hit us?
Well, I think like the first stage with many things is the awareness. Like once you know, oh, human beings have a negativity bias. Oh, that's why the the more threatening situation or comment or experience is so much more profound to me. That's why I can't let go of it. That's why I get into sort of rumination in my brain about a particular thing. It's understanding is the key to evolving and dealing with these things. So just the pure awareness can sort of build a level of mindfulness when you step into that situation. You go, oh, that's just my negativity bias. In a very like real world relevant example for me these days is I might finish a training session at camp and I'll remember my missed shots way more than my made shots. That will dictate generally how I feel about a session. If I can think of a time that I fluffed 3 layups, they will be so much more salient in my mind than like the mid ranges I'd made previously in an earlier scrimmage because the negative event is so much louder in my brain. And so I have to learn to go and actually kind of pick apart my memories and really force myself to pay attention to the positive things because they do deserve to be noticed. And then you kind of feel a more balanced way about things. So I guess to answer your question, it would be understand this about yourself and don't judge or um like what's the right word? Sort of disdain yourself for this. It's a natural part of your evolutionary wiring of your own psychology. Um, and so and so we have to work with it rather than sort of shame it, if that makes sense.
When you're when you slash your tire on the motorway,
Yeah.
work with it by still being positive.
Well, one thing about me, which people have told me before in the past, and I do feel, and I don't want to sound like I'm like tooting my own trumpet because I don't mean to. I'm just being real. Is that I get a lot of joy out of very simple, stupid things, and I don't know whether that's just because of I have a generally optimistic or grateful inclination towards the world, or because of I don't know experiences I've had in the past, psychedelic or not, or just like stuff that I've read and personal development I've done. But like little things make me so happy. Like this is such a stupid one, but like kitchen roll is something that I'm like it's so useful. You spill anything in the kitchen, it just sorts it out. Or like the simple thing of just having like good food, or like music in the shower, or the taste of coconut water in a training session, or just like it doesn't matter what it is. It sounds stupid when you use these little examples, but like taking points in your life that you can see as positive and really trying to squeeze the positivity out of it and find the enthusiasm in it. Because if anything, yes, your brain will be inclined to be negative, and those things will be louder, but there is a way that you can train yourself to see the positive and point it out. Like just even the first sip of coffee on a morning in my car with music on, that brings me so much joy. And it'd be very easy to just stick in autopilot and just go through those things every day like we do. But if you work on it consciously, it can be so powerful. Like I sent you that article a few weeks ago about why we're nostalgic for the past, why we're nostalgic for our childhood. And it's because in our childhood everything was new, and exciting and different. And obviously, the article argued that you can still do that today by taking things slowly, being present with what you're doing and doing something slightly different, or just taking a moment to really taste that cup of coffee, or really smell the smell of cut grass when you go on your morning walk, or really take a look at your surroundings when you're driving around and really feel the steering wheel in your hands. That's something that I do now that I got from Chris Williamson because he said it was like a little reminder for him to be present is he'll feel like the little what would you call them, like crinkles in the lining of the steering wheel that are underneath, and with his thumb. And now I do that when I'm driving on the motorway to just kind of like ground me. And this is slightly irrelevant but also similar, that we had an online meeting with an ex-GB player last camp, and one of the things I asked him about his mental prep towards games and how he stays present and calm and collected. And one of the things he does is before every free throw, he squeezes his fist for 3 seconds so that he comes into his body and into the present moment. So there's just ways to pay. I guess what the overall conclusion from this ramble is you can pay more attention to make the positive louder to outweigh our negativity bias, I guess. And that comes through presence and
Mm.
mindfulness and
That
appreciation.
makes sense. Yeah. Now you said that, I think I do agree that you are quite good at t making joys out of the small things.
Mm.
Um, I'm gonna pivot a little bit onto my main point. So the question I'm trying to answer today is what is health in the kind of abstract in the spiritual? Because I'm not going to go down the biology route and what a biologist would say. I want to go down the spiritual route, the psychological route, and also I managed to tie it with this kind of spirit of youth. So I'll I'll start with I'll start with saying that from a spiritual perspective, health is this thing that you kind of carry around with you for all 24 hours of the day. It it affects your reality with how you kind of engage with it. And the best way that it manifests itself to me is through peace. When when you're healthy, you have the ability for peace. unlike a unhealthy man would. And there's this beautiful quote that I don't know where it's from, but it was on Riyadh's Instagram, and it says, "Peace is happiness in digestion." And then when you think about that, happiness is this kind of sensation of the taste on your taste buds, but it's fleeting. And peace is this process of getting that happiness and then digesting it
Mm,
like a healthy,
mm,
and then you feel dividends. You feel the dividends of that healthy meal today, tomorrow, and in a year's time.
yeah.
From a psychological perspective, health to me is a wise mind, a wise person. And I think there's a good kind of way of thinking about this is the teacher has a responsibility almost like a doctor, in that the teacher is kind of like a doctor for the mind, where you have this disease in you. You have an ego. The ego is kind of like a disease in this analogy, kind of like a naughty kid in the classroom. And the teacher's job is to prescribe this medicine so that you're more of a harmonious thinker, so that you think right. And James Hollis speaks on the symptoms that are, I think he says, we have these symptoms that are inclinations that our psyche is not amused by our choices.
Mm.
So maybe, maybe you're thinking through ego and you make some bad decisions. And that's why we need this mentor, we need this teacher that can cure our way of thinking. And if I, before I let you say some thoughts, I was watching this JRE episode. There was a guy that went on about a month ago called Warren Smith, and he's one of these people, a bit like Jordan Peterson, that has his very different approach against the education system. He blew up with a video about J.K. Rowling when he had a viral video where a student says to him that J.K. Rowling is has these bigoted opinions, and then Warren Smith, the teacher, he says, "Well, what is it that J.K. Rowling says that's bigoted?" And then the student says, "Oh well, she says some things about transgender people." And then Warren Smith says, "Well, why are those things? Why are they bigoted opinions?" And he keeps asking why, like this sort of Socratic questioning to really get down to the bottom. And because the student also says like, "Oh, but some people think this," and I've just heard it, and then he's like, "No, let's not say what other people say. Why do you think that that is bigoted?" And he really gets, and that's what I think a teacher needs to do is they need to teach people to think for themselves, because everyone can kind of memorize something. Everyone can hear what other people say, and then that forms their opinion. But a teacher makes them think for themselves. A good teacher does anyway. So I'll pause there and I'll let you talk.
I think just on a baseline, your point that health from a spiritual and psychological perspective is different to like a biological, physical body perspective. Yes, they're like interlinked and interwoven. Like if your physical body's in a good place, then the probability that your spiritual and psychological health will be in a good state definitely increases. Um, but they can't be treated the same. It's you're not gonna, you could be physically healthy, but you're not gonna be by default spiritually healthy as a consequence of that. And I think if anything, the physical health stuff comes from a foundation of the other two. Like you have to have the mindset and the faith that it's right to look after yourself. Um, and so this is something that's really important to think about. I do think that spiritual health is about presence, and I guess presence and peace can be interwoven or related because when you're present, you naturally have a state of peace. When you're in the now, when you're not flickering between past realities and future anxieties, there is peace because the moment is what it is. That there isn't necessarily bad or emotionally disruptive. Emotions just come from our perception of things, I guess. The now is just what it is. It's just the moment. It's just that stillness. And then, yeah, I think you're right about psychological health being wisdom. And I put here self-acceptance, the absence of ego, the absence of psychic conflict, that clarity of mind, I guess. And wisdom is about clarity. Wisdom is not about knowing everything. It's just knowing this kind of the the philosophies and the thought processes that are most true to you and most concrete and defined and understandable for you to go out in life. I think the wisest person is not the intellectual that knows everything. The wise person is the one that accepts their reality and themselves and how they think about that and how they respond and relate to the world. Um, and I like your analogy about teachers and mentors being doctors of the mind. And we're not talking about teachers as in like, your primary school maths teacher that taught you fractions. A teacher can be that random person you had a conversation with in the coffee shop that was older than you and had stories to tell, or like a mentor in a kind of skill that you want to develop. For me, obviously, I've come from an athletic background with coaches and sporting mentors that have taught me more about life than any teacher that I had in school, or your parents, or a good friend, or the mentors are around. It's more of a feeling and it's a gut sense than somebody who's got qualifications and can teach you a textbook thing. Like I think there's a textbook of life that's unwritten that remains maybe in the soul or in the wisdom of people from real lived experience, and you can only get that through interacting with them, and that is how you improve your psychological health. So I think yeah, this is really nice. Have you been able to distill it down into practical things like how do we prioritize and improve these things? How do we seek out the right teachers? How do we know who a teacher is?
What I would, yeah, what comes to mind would be live like everyone's a mentor. Everyone knows something you don't.
Hmm.
And like Socrates' belief is that he knew that he knew nothing.
Hmm.
If everyone knows something that you don't, if you treat everyone like a mentor, then you can learn the very specific thing that that person's lived through and how he grew up in this area in Liverpool and how he can help fix your car because you don't really know anything about that. I think it's this eternal student, and I think someone needs to do a diagram on how the spiritual health, mental health, and physical health kind of interlink like a triangle. Like I think you're right in that all three kind of affect each other, and that if you a strong body would equal a strong mind, but a strong mind might equal a good spirit, and then a strong spirit would equal a good body. I think there is going someone needs to figure that out, do like a nice little symbol for that.
One thing that I just thought to jump in there that's really important and related to what you just said is the concept of an anti-role model that we've just stolen straight from Chris Williamson from the Modern Wisdom podcast. We might have discussed it before in previous episodes, but the idea that even if somebody doesn't live a desirable life for you or doesn't possess desirable traits that you'd like, you can still learn from them. And the way you
Mm.
do that is by watching, paying attention. How do they speak? How do they think? How do they act? What consequences does that lead to down the line? Is that something you'd like to replicate? If not, then what's the opposite to that? Or what's something that's far enough away from that that you know that the outcome is more likely to be positive? Like that's a real thing too, because like Chris Williamson said when he developed this theory, is you might be in a situation where there isn't anybody around you that you really want to be like. But there will be definitely more likely to be people around you don't want to be like. And then what are their patterns that you'd rather avoid? Um, so I think that's right. Everyone can be a teacher in their own way if you pay enough attention, if you listen. And that then comes back to peace and presence because you can only really listen that intently if you're here right now. If it's not
Yeah,
overglazed with your own narratives.
yeah, I like that. Learn through others' mistakes, not just, I guess, through their victories.
Mm.
Um, I want to. I kind of thought that health and youth have a lot of similarities, and youth is this kind of It's this spirit rather than a quantifiable age. Youth is this curiosity that is the spirit that keeps craving like energy for life.
Play.
It Yeah, and also I think it ties into yeah, play, adventure, a lot of these things. And you it's not like when you're old and you resent the youth because the youth has this potential and the youth is risk taking. There's some danger in it and something interesting. I guess it's kind of like the fall as well, in that young people we're amateurs at everything. Um, we're just students making mistakes,
Mm.
and but we're not quite set in our ways yet. We're not cynical yet, and like I thought of a couple good examples. One thing that's really helped me in the past sort of couple months was when I was launching my clothing brand business. Sort of treated it like a business before it was a hobby. This is something I found out quite recently, in that I didn't have fun with it from day one, and I guess I would have done that a bit differently. Whereas now I'm just trying to, I guess, have fun with it and produce the best guerrilla marketing possible. And it's whereas I guess with the podcast, I think we've done that a bit better in that it's from day one we've approached it with this more youthful, playful energy. Um, and then I've got another analogy about there's a good question of what is the best date possible? And I thought about it, and it always ends with the guy playing guitar and singing in a nice view to the girl. Um, which is that's gonna beat this older like Jack guy with a Rolex. Well, because well, what does this mean? What does this analogy mean? Well, the youth are gifted, and they're gifted with this spirit of play, or or whatever you kind of want to call it. Um, and the analogy of the guitar, it's this gift that presents itself with so much depth in the moment.
Mm.
You can't poeticize, if that's a word, your presence. Um, and then you might say, well, I'm not a musician. But then I would say, well, what's your version of playing the guitar and singing? What can you manifest that's inside of you? And then this analogy of the date, I think we can expand this to the girl can represent the audience, and you're kind of the talent, you're the gift to the world.
Mm.
Um, and I think that's kind of what youth is you realize that you have something inside of you, and you you gotta you gotta you gotta share it. Some final thoughts is what would health be in terms of money? Well, I personally think that a nice sort of consistent money in this wealth, a sustainable kind of 2K, 3K, 4K is going to be better than hoarding a lot of savings. To me, hoarding is kind of like you're more kind of waiting for your death. It's not as healthy. And I've finished with this quote of a sudden announcement of good fortune can easily prove fatal because the ratio of unhappiness to happiness is no more than what we demanded and what we receive. We lack the capacity to receive a sudden piece of good fortune, since it meets with no existing demand which neutralize it. If you get success without going through hell first, the hell creates itself later.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot here. I'll start with going back to what you were saying about youth and play and childhood. And I wrote here, what do you do as a kid? Well, everything's kind of a new adventure because everything's novel, so you don't really know what's going to happen. You just try shit out. You go to a new place. You're discovering nature and places and toys and imagination. And you have that adventure, whether that's out in the world or inside your own mind. You act out your imagination in that adventure. You possess the kind of spirit of play in that. You know, you're creative and you're putting on a show in your own mind. I mean, I remember how much I used to just play with little Lego characters and create narratives about, adversarial relationships and have them fight and create a whole story in my own mind. And you're not afraid to look silly in doing that. You're not afraid to invest in your imagination and what you don't yet understand. And at some point along the line, self-consciousness comes in, and we kill off that part of ourselves. But I think the people we want to be around most, are not, oversized infants. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. You do need to grow up, of course, and adopt a level of responsibility. But we also do crave that adventurous, not afraid to look silly, uh, drive for novel experiences and to be kind of possessed by a playful spirit. We desire that in our friends and in our loved ones. We do. Because like I kind of said earlier about the conversation topic, it's a refreshing thing because everyone seems to be so bogged down with the serious and the mundane in our lives that someone coming along that treats life with this kind of playful, artistic perspective it is refreshing. So there's a balance point, obviously. You don't want to be a man child, but you want to be a man that can be possessed by the spirit of his childhood self, I guess. A man who can still be playful at the right time, but also be serious at the right time. So there's a balance point there. But yeah, I think when you meet people that don't have that anymore, you made a reference to like some jacked like finance bro with a Rolex that's like trying to go on a date with a girl. And I think there's a part of his soul that's died because he's been so invested in his ego and the status game and other people's expectations that he's killed that playful part of himself. Whereas the one that can play the guitar and serenade and express himself creatively still has that. I think that to me is what you're pointing to there, which is
Mm.
really nice.
I think there's probably some. I think Freud would be quite useful in this context and how we need to allow the mother to give up the child into the world
Mm,
and allow the child to, I guess, pursue the dreams, their own future, rather than the future that the parents desire. And that, yeah, I guess that's the child's responsibility as well, then to kind of go towards the calling rather than the comfort of the house. Um, and so yeah, then it's the parents' responsibility to make that sacrifice. And rather than kind of what we see today of I feel like there's a lot of this these kind of a lot of these Facebook posts where parents kind of try to show their like unfulfilled dreams throughout their children.
mm,
Um, I see that a lot with people that are maybe sort of 5 years older than me that have kids. It's sort of constantly kind of showing them off because that's then their thing of ego is how good my child is at this thing. Whereas I know internally some of these families aren't actually functioning too well.
no, and that person has been psychically possessed by their own regrets and unmade decisions and by the remorse of times where they've let fear win and they've violated the meaning of life and they've left some of their life on the table. And so that deep kind of psychic pain that they don't realize they're really going through manifests as this like overbearing pressure on their children. I think that's a real thing, and it's not something that the world wants us to talk about or point to, but I think it's real. I've certainly seen it in the sporting world, blimey. Especially because, yeah, I'm in a Paralympic sport with kids with disabilities, and parents putting that kind of, I don't know, like living vicariously through their kids. But anyway, that's a whole another rabbit hole. Um, but yeah, there's this. I think there's this, just to go back to my childhood point again, there's this like drive for novel experience and adventure that we have so fruitfully as a kid that at some point on the line we give up to fit in. Like I think that mentality that you can strive for new thrilling experience can and meaning, I guess, is what I mean. That drive to have meaningful creative experience can still be with like upheld as an adult, and be still a grown up responsible person. It's like there was a quote in that the book I've just given you by James Hollis where he's quoting I think his name's Yuval Noah Harari or something like that, the guy that wrote *Sapiens*. Um, and in his in it might have been in *Sapiens* on the second, I think it was his second book, which is like about the future of humanity. He writes something like, at some point along the line in human history, we gave up meaning in order to gain power. So it's almost like when we want power over our lives, and our ego wants power over our lives and environment, we let go of our playfulness and our meaningful relationship to the world. Does that make sense? It's like in the striving to have control and understanding and to grasp reality and fucking squeeze it into our cookie cutter mold of how we want it to be, we let go of our capacity for meaning because meaning comes from play, meaning comes from adventure. And one key aspect of adventure is you have to not know what's going to happen. You have to use faith, you have to take risk. And all of those things are terrifying to an ego that wants power and wants control.
Mm. I think something that I read from the James Hollis book as well that I think links into this is he talks about these existential threats of overwhelmment and abandonment
Mm,
of them being the two core stories that we tell ourselves. Overwhelmment is this overwhelmment of us being a finite being in an infinite universe and how we
mm,
deal with that.
mm,
And we then sort of create patterns to cope. And like you said, I think avoidance it taps into this power complex, and he talks about how it might be power over others. Um, but there's also, and you also said about how we create our own values to fit in, and that's what he talks about as well. And maybe there's sort of numbing that might come into this, numbing through vices, drugs, and stuff. I think there's yeah, I'll leave that there for a sec.
I think I related that. I remember that bit in the book, and I remember relating it to it quite a lot when he talked about the different coping mechanisms to these existential threats, and like the first stage being like avoidance or ignorance to it, but then the other one is a realization of it that manifests in like an overdrive to work and control one's reality. And I'm like, that just describes me in lockdown to a T. Like I was suddenly hit with all these existential questions of like, who am I? What do I want from my life? What matters? What's important? And is a coping mechanism to my lack of answers and maybe my feeling of isolation from others because I didn't feel like my current friend groups or relationships were questioning the same things I was questioning, was that I just worked. I just grinded at my education or at the YouTube videos I was making at the time or in the gym or whatever. I just used that as a source of control. That gave me the illusion of control, the illusion of answers, because as long as I'd ticked off my bloody to-do list by the time I went to bed, at least I felt okay about myself. But secretly, there was a part of me that still strived for deeper answers. So I think that is the bit you're referring to. That was so like pointing at me, I felt like when I read that.
Yeah, when you said the first thing is we're not kind of aware of it, we're ignorant of it. It says in the book that Freud pointed out that the what people do is they project it from our ego consciousness and we push it to our unconscious so that we're not really we just act like this is we just act, I guess, to fit in, and like these things don't matter and we kind of forget about them and push them aside.
Mm.
And I don't think this is that linked, but another I'm only on I've only read the first 12 pages but of this book, but as you've said before, it's very sort of dense and it's good stuff. And there's another quote of the desired outcome for therapy is the discovery that we are not what happened to us. but what we
Mm,
choose to become.
mm,
I am what is I am what is wanting expression through me, not what happened
mm,
to me. Separating your journey from the history is difficult, but is essential for a free and fuller life.
mm.
Uh,
So good.
Amazing.
So good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you're not what your brain tells you you are either, which is so hard to differentiate. You know, it's so easy to just take your internal feelings at face value. I remember once I wrote how our inner critic seems so truthful because it's inside of us. Like we take it as gospel because it comes from inside of us. But if somebody outside of us told us these things or spoke about us in this way, if we had a sort of stable degree of self-esteem, we would just disregard those opinions. But because it comes from within, we feel like it's us. But if you don't relate to that voice, you don't connect to it, then that's not you. You are what seeks expression from within. Um, so good, so powerful.
I think he has this line where like when you meet someone for the first time, you're meeting their history that's projected. He
Mm,
uses that kind of language quite a lot, and I think that can be maybe a solution to who our critic tells us to. It's not just who we are right now; it's our whole history. He also sort of goes down. I like what he says about dreams as well. That was quite fascinating. He was saying how like in a normal sleep cycle, we average like 6 dreams per night, but we don't remember 6 dreams per night. So like what's kind of going on? And he believes that there's this purpose of the dream formation, and that it helps us sort of guides us through on a daily basis to I guess I think he says metabolize our experiences.
mm,
Even if we don't work with the meaning, um, it still kind of guides us. There's still some informing intelligence that's looking out for us,
mm,
looking at our lives, and is trying to offer its perspective. And would it, he says, would it not make sense from time to time to listen what those dreams are trying to tell us? Um, that can be interpreted in quite a few ways, but yeah, there is I like that there might be something that's kind of unconsciously guiding us, and I know you've sort of had beliefs about that being true before.
Well, the point that seems significant to me is everything that I guess we possess, every characteristic, physical or psychological, exists because it was beneficial somehow to our like survival and our lives as human beings. And so imagination is such a significant part of our psychological life that it must have some use. It can't just be a inconsequential, like accidental product of the mind. There must be a reason that we can imagine things, right? In a dream or even in our waking life. And you don't know where your imaginations come from, just like you don't know where your thoughts come from. They kind of just appear in your mind in the same way you don't control what you dream about. Something, and be that, people might think that's just luck of the draw and spontaneity and randomness and coincidence, but something is coordinating the images in your mind and the narratives that come up, especially in dreams. And because it feels so separate from you, it's like you're in a film that you didn't direct. You don't know the script, you're just in it. Where's that coming from? What's the purpose of it? You know? It must be something at least worth considering. No, I don't mean take it as gospel. I don't mean center your whole life around it, but just think like what could this dream potentially mean? Because there's definitely a line where we then go into like the woo-woo spiritual abstract stuff about dream interpretation, but I think there's a point before we get there that's like the depth psychology perspective it's how our unconscious is processing our life. And there's so much mental function we know that we're not consciously aware of. It's that happening, and it's that process's way of trying to communicate stuff to us in a symbolic way, in a way of the right hemisphere, not of the left hemisphere. We're so used to this left hemisphere, very clearly defined way of thinking that using symbols and using narrative and using metaphor in our dreams is hard to sort of dissect. But that's because it's just using a part of our psychology, a part of our mind, a part of our intellect that's dormant now to a large degree in our lives. So they say there is something to it. I agree.
Yeah. I think what everyone can do is when they wake up, try and remember. I think well, we spoke to a dream guy once where he said, try and remember something about that dream and try and apply it and try and make sense. That's what I try and do when I wake up.
Yeah,
Um,
write it down. That's useful, even in just brief notes, because it's so elusive. Within 10 minutes, if you get in the shower, you'll be gone. By the time
mm.
you're brushing your teeth and getting dressed, it's gone. Because immediately you get hit with the first thing I think when I wake up is what time is it? What day is it? What do I have to do today? Before that, as soon as those thoughts come in, the dream you just had is gone. You know?
Yeah. Um, Joe, we got 10 minutes left. I thought we'd reflect on the last 100 episodes and
Mm.
sort of say a bit each. For my bit, doing this podcast has been a very meta process and how it it does so much to how I approach the rest of my week. I started like it's not just a 1 hour call. These ideas have like a lot of pay a lot of dividends for I guess like I was talking about with health of today, tomorrow, and in 10 years' time. And I started 100 episodes ago with not being able to talk to a camera and to speak in front of a camera and not even comprehending some of the ideas that we'd speak about now. And I was more of just like a normal person. And then you speak to a couple people and um, you kind of realize that there's more to life and there's more going on in this world and this feeling of being fascinated, I guess I became addicted to. And so then you kind of keep repeating it and you keep wanting that hit of fascination and wanting more and more and more. And from the back end point of view, the first year we were pretty terrible for the content that what I was putting out and the way that I'd package ourselves in terms of clips and the viewership was very small. But I think the second year has been a lot of progress. The second year has been from year one to year two. I think it's been more progress than year zero to year one. Um, because year one to year two, all the sort of big ideas came out. The original ideas came out. We kind of found ourselves a little bit more. We kind of identified our worldview a little bit more. And now I'm kind of, as I was speaking to the guy yesterday, Rocks yesterday, he was saying about how you need to live it. You need to live it being an interviewer, and I think I do because people that I meet now, I just I just interview without not knowing that I'm interviewing them, and then people point it out and they say, "Oh, look, Jacob's interviewing someone now," and and but it's almost not conscious anymore, and yeah, I couldn't have done it without you. In that you've had to carry me a lot with the speaking and the front end. And I've had a high target to consistently match up to. Um, but I've been pushed in the best way, and it hasn't been. It's been on that line of chaos and order where it's I'm not talking to Jordan Peterson, but I'm not talking to a slob at a fast food restaurant. So it's always been it's this nice little tree that we're growing, and I think it's growing in the right way. And we're not listening to many external people. We're literally just doing it for ourselves. People are quickly this this Leather Boys podcast might grow it like and get almost as big as us in a couple months, but I know what we have is so much more valuable than any sort of external thing, and I wouldn't want to follow and adapt to them or even sort of be audience captured,
Mm.
because I know it's about the conversation and how that conversation can keep getting better and better. So yeah, my thoughts there.
That was beautiful, man. Honestly, that makes something in my heart glow just hearing that because I feel many of the same ways. Uh it's this is it's not just a podcast. You're right, it's a meta thing. It's a public personal development tool. It's a symbol of mine and yours friendship. It's a it's like those things that you sharpen kitchen knives with, right? It's like that, but for our minds. It's like a place we can come. It's like you think about it like a martial arts dojo for our philosophies on how to interact with the world. That every week we come and sit down, and whether it's just me and you or whether we have some guest on, we just play with ideas about how to think and how to speak and how to digest and process experience. And that, I think, is why the numbers or any of the external stuff doesn't matter because that's so face value and shallow and left hemisphere. Like that's the way that many side characters perceive why we do the podcast. It must be, right? But that's not what it is to me. To me, it's about the prospering of our own relationship to the world. And that's something so much deeper than Instagram or or money or social status. That's something deeply, deeply meaningful. And you're so right that it expands out to how we think about the world and how we live our daily lives and who we are. We've carved both of ourselves over the past few years by doing this. I am not the same person I was 2 years ago, in large part because of the podcast. And same with you. And you say you couldn't do it without me. Well, the feeling's mutual, man. There's no way I'd be able to do the output like we do with the podcast without you. Um, and yes, I might be like more articulate and have more knowledge around certain like areas, but I don't think we can look past the fact that I needed somebody to ask me those questions. I needed somebody to go, Joel, your yap is interesting. I find it interesting. Keep going. Somebody that had the patience to sit through my weird analogies and my weird sort of anecdotes from my life. And that's been so useful. You've made me feel heard. And it's given me an excuse to express my authentic self. And that's so rare to people in this world. How many people actually have an outlet to express themselves? So this is it's not just a podcast. It's not just something we're doing to try and make people listen to us. We don't claim to have answers. We're just figuring shit out. And it's something you said in this conversation that in many ways, we're a bridge between the the normal person and the thinker, the philosopher, the psychologist, the clinician. And it's like, yeah, because we don't claim to be as smart as these people in any capacity. We are trying to digest what they've said. We're trying to unpick the wisdom for ourselves and for anyone listening that can gain value from that. So, yeah, I want to thank you, man. I want to thank you for the hours of work and dedication that you've put into this because it's not possible without you. And we are both um, so much better off for doing this. And not only us, our loved ones, our friends, our partners, our future children will benefit from this practice. And I know that without a doubt, because the more we carve our own selves and our philosophies and our perspective on the world, the more our life improves. And that's so exciting because I don't know what the upper limit to that is. And we're figuring out on a daily, weekly, monthly basis as time goes by. So just good luck to whoever's going to doubt us because the fact we find this so meaningful just means we ain't going to stop, you know?
At 20 years old.
Mm.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for listening. We're gonna put a decade into this podcast game. So I guess that'll be sort of episode 500 or something. So um, yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.